All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. I see we already have 5 or 6 folks in the video chat room. If you're here right now, you have already been here before. I send out an early invitation to our past participants so you can get in a little bit early and get a chance to ask me a question and log in and come on video with me. Take care of a little bit of business real quick before I get started. If you've got a question you want to come on video right now, go ahead and start sending in those join requests, and I'll get to you in a second. Just let me configure a couple of settings so we can get this ready for everyone. So, all right. Okay, to start, can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, hit that the little props button down on the bottom right, just so I know that that everyone can. There we go. Okay, good. So if you haven't done this before, probably have, but if you haven't, I'm David Layfield with Affordable Housing Online. I'm an affordable housing expert. I've been practicing affordable housing for about 25 years. I've done all sorts of things in the business and developed affordable housing. I currently own affordable housing. I've worked for a management company. I've been a property manager. I've cut the grass at apartment communities. I worked for the U.S. government, managing a federal housing program for several years. And I currently am a developer, but also my day job now is helping folks like you, the affordable housing renter, better find affordable housing online. So about 14 years ago, I founded Affordable Housing Online. We have about 1 million visitors a month coming to our website, looking for affordable housing, and we are really the only source online for folks that are searching for affordable housing. So the format of my talk show, I'm going to go for, I'm going to try and cut this off around 4 o'clock. So I've got 1 hour and 40 minutes I'll allocate to this if questions keep coming in. There's an open seat here. Anybody that wants to ask me questions. We have a bunch of questions that have been piling up over the last week that have come in from users. But if you have a question, post it in the comments. If you're on desktop, the comments are over on the right, and on mobile, whether it's the mobile website or the mobile app, then the questions are down underneath. So I'll go ahead and open this up. Like I said, I came in here early to answer some questions for folks that have been here before, and I've got my first request, my first call in, so I'll go ahead and take that now. Remember, we do have some bandwidth limits. If you're coming in via 3G or a really slow internet connection, we may not be able to connect you, but keep trying if it doesn't work. So I'm trying to connect now with Jake Holm. In the meantime, while I'm trying to connect with Jake, let me see what kind of questions I've got today. All right, so while we're trying to connect Jake, I'm going to go ahead and start with, there's an interesting question someone had about discrimination. So I need discrimination information on a person with a criminal record applying for affordable housing, as I have one, which is due to an addiction problem that has been treated. In the fair housing law that it is cited, states nothing about criminal records, which should be stated since the question is asked on the application. So basically, this user is asking, can you claim discrimination if you're denied housing because you have a criminal record? And the answer to that is no. You cannot claim discrimination. Discrimination is very specific. It's something called a protected class. So you have federal levels of housing discrimination, and then there are at the local level, whether it be state or even some cities have protected classes where you can't discriminate. And I don't know of any place that a criminal record is a protected class. So you have no grounds to file a discrimination lawsuit or claim because you have a criminal record, even if it's a very old criminal record. Now, it's still a complex issue, criminal histories, when it comes to housing. And we had a past question, which I had to do quite a bit of research on, so some of this is kind of fresh on my mind. We had someone that had a 17-year-old marijuana charge. Literally, they were charged with possession of marijuana 17 years ago. And they wanted to know, was that going to stop them from qualifying for Section 8 or other types of housing assistance? And technically, if that charge is still on their criminal record, it's possible, but I believe highly unlikely. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, the age of the charge. If it was 17 years ago, you've demonstrated that you've reformed yourself and you're no longer participating in those types of activities. It's highly likely that you'll be fine. If it's housing assistance provided by a housing authority, the housing authority is given by HUD is given a lot of latitude on how to set their priorities when it comes to addressing criminal histories. At the federal level, the policies, regulations that the housing authorities have to abide by are fairly specific, high level stuff. Like it can't be a felony drug charge. It can't be it can't be any sort of sex crime. I think even domestic violence. But that's it. It doesn't get into misdemeanor stuff at the federal level, but at the housing authority level, they can actually say, yeah, we'll initiate a 2-year ban on anybody with a misdemeanor or whatever. So it's very, it depends on the housing authority that you're dealing with. And then if you're not talking about a housing authority, but a landlord, then landlords can kind of enforce it however they like. And many landlords will establish, okay, someone said I'm audio only. Am I audio only, or can everyone see me? If you can see me, hit that props button down on the bottom right. Can you see me? If you can see me, hit the props button down on the bottom right. Yeah, okay. I don't know, but everybody can see me. Sorry about that. A little bit of a distraction, but we're still trying to figure out some of the technology stuff for this format. So, for example, I am an owner of affordable housing apartment communities, and we have fairly specific standards when it comes to criminal history. We look, and I can't address individual criteria because I don't directly manage the properties. We employ a management company, but we say, the management company says, this type of offense is okay if it has occurred in 2 or more years prior, whatever. So a landlord can establish their own criteria, and if it's a private landlord and they do a criminal background check and they find anything, they're many times going to be likely to just say no, especially if they have a good pool of applicants. So no, you can't file a discrimination complaint if you're denied housing for a criminal background. And then yes and no, criminal background will play a role in whether or not you can receive housing assistance or housing. So, okay, again, if you've got a question and you want to come on screen and ask it to me, hit that join button there in the box to my right, and I'll happily try and answer it live. If we can't answer it, I'll research it and get back to you. So it looks like I have one that just came in that Nate posted over here on the side for me. If a Section 8 waiting list opens up and it does not state that they will be taking all applicants and conducting a lottery to compile a waiting list, does it just go in order of who applied first and thereon? And it does not state that they will be taking all applicants and conducting a lottery. Okay, well, this is a tough one. We've cataloged over 420 some Section 8 housing choice voucher waiting list openings. Many of them are open all the time. Many of them are scheduled to open in the future or open right now and closing soon. So we've gotten pretty good at understanding how these waiting list openings happen after watching hundreds and hundreds and writing up and analyzing hundreds of different waiting list openings. And honestly, sometimes the housing authority simply doesn't communicate enough information about their policies. So they'll issue a public notice, they'll put something in the newspaper, they'll publish it on their website, and they give 10% of the information that's important to you to know to apply, that's important to us to be able to share that information with you. Or it's 20%, 30%, but usually it's not everything. So just because they don't say it's a lottery or they don't say how many applications they're going to choose randomly to put on the waiting list through a lottery doesn't mean that it's not a lottery, but it also doesn't mean that it is a lottery. So what we try to do is when we find one of those, we call the housing authority, we'll reach out to them, and we ask the right questions to try and clarify that. And we almost always try to give you as much clarity in our informational presentation as we can. So that's why I would suggest that the information that you find on Affordable Housing Online about a specific housing authority's opening is better, more concise, and easier for you to access than the actual information being provided by that housing authority. Because we're housing experts that are taking the housing authority's information, parsing through it, figuring out what's most important to you, and getting that information, the most important information to you first, instead of you having to dig and read the public notice and then dig and find the hidden Section 8 Q&A on their website, or even have to make a call because they don't get any information. We do our best to give that information to you in just a few paragraphs. And then, of course, we link out to their application and their informational resources, but we're reading it, digesting it, analyzing it, and giving it to you in the simplest form possible. So the answer to your question is, it does not mean that it's a first come, first served, but in many instances it is. But if you fall back on our write-ups for the waiting list openings, we will always emphasize if it's a lottery or if it's first come, first served. And we also always try to pinpoint the number of applicants that are going to be chosen and put on the list. So again, if you've got a question, you're welcome to ask to join. I have Olga that's asking to come in. I'm going to try and get Olga in the video chat right now. Again, if you have a poor internet connection, it may be difficult to connect you. We actually fairly often have this issue. If you're coming in from your phone, it's going to be very difficult to connect you. I do have, looks like I have Olga on audio only. Hi, Olga. Olga, are you there? Okay, sorry, I don't have any audio. Nate, is Olga there or no? Okay, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the next caller, Devana. Hi, Devana.
Hi.
How are you?
That long ago.
How you doing?
Yeah, Devana, not Devana.
Yeah, Devana. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
I always butcher names. You have to forgive me for that.
I know. It's okay. I got it. Yeah. Okay. I still haven't gotten a call about, my CHA being I don't know. I mean, I know I got that other message or whatever, another letter from
Okay,
them.
so if I remember correctly, and I parse through a lot of users' cases every week, but if I'm not mistaken, it was the Chicago Housing Authority. There was some confusion that you were too young. Is that right?
Yeah, it was saying that I was too young. It was saying that I was born, in a certain year that I know I wasn't born in.
Right. Okay, so I remember your case. Have you made any progress?
No, not really. Nobody has called me back, but they just keep telling me to just holding on and all of this stuff like that. And just don't I won't lose my space or whatever. But the fact that they made a mistake in the beginning is kind of still awkward. They were saying that I was like 6 years old, but I know I'm 27. I just turned 27.
Mm.
So it is just kind of weird to me. So I'm still
Um,
trying to figure, should I just be
mm.
waiting for them to call me about this or an email or something? I'm not sure.
So, so I don't think you have anything, in my opinion, I don't think you have much to worry about. But you do want to try and verify what your position on the waiting list was before,
Mm-hmm.
at the time that before the mistake was fixed, and
Right.
what position you are on the waiting list right now. And hopefully there's not much difference. I can tell you that that number can shift daily. So and it's possible that the number could go up or down, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
if obviously, let's say you're number 1,000 on the waiting list, right? And
Okay.
on one day you're number 1,000, and then 3 days later you might be number 998, right? That means you moved up 2 spots, and that means that 2 people
Mm-hmm.
above you were
Okay.
somehow removed. They could have been asked to remove from the list, to be removed from the list. They may have been issued vouchers, and moved off the waiting list onto the voucher roll. They may have been income qualified, when it's time to do the interview, and then, oops, you make too much money. Sorry, we're going to take you
Oh,
off the list, and you're not going to get a voucher. So there's many reasons why you might move up the list. And then there's also the possibility you could move down the list. So one day you might check your 1,000, and the next day you're 1,005, and that's because of preferences. There may
mm,
be someone that was number 10,000, and in Chicago, I think Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, has like 25,000 that they chose.
yeah,
Um,
that's crazy.
is that right? 20 was it 25,000?
Probably, but I just
Yeah,
know they told me I wasn't old enough, and I called
yeah,
them and they said sorry and all that. But
yeah.
it
I,
was
I, I honestly don't think you have anything to worry about. I think in all likelihood the system placed you on the waiting list at a certain point,
okay.
and if you were in the system then and you're in it now and you're still on that waiting
Mm-hmm.
list, I don't think it would have reordered you in any way. But with that being said, you should still ask them. You should try and get a response from them.
Okay.
All right, but don't
Well,
worry.
I'm gonna keep
The one thing that you have to be when you're applying for Section 8 is patient.
yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while, and don't forget to try to find other forms of assistance. Don't stop trying to improve your income if it's possible. Don't stop looking for jobs. Don't stop looking for training opportunities to learn a new skill. And don't stop applying for other forms of housing assistance. There's other forms of housing assistance other than Section 8.
Okay. Well, can you give me a couple of examples?
Of other forms of housing assistance?
Yes.
Okay. So for example, the low income housing tax credit program it's a program that's a bricks and mortar building program. So when I say bricks and mortar, I mean literally the actual building itself is subsidized, not the rent, right? Like Section 8, it's helping you pay the rent. A bricks and mortar subsidy program is helping the landlord build a cheaper building so that the rent is lower.
Okay.
And so, a low income housing tax credit property, you're still gonna pay rent, and it's gonna be more than what you might pay, in public housing, but it's gonna be a lot.
Right.
It's gonna be a lot less than if you just try to rent on the open market. And usually tax credit properties are usually really nice. They have great amenities, good sized units, they're well maintained. It's just that there usually isn't a rent subsidy attached to it. And then the other program I'm going to highlight is Section 8 project-based assistance. And Section 8 project-based assistance is similar to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. It's similar to public housing, but it's a Section 8 assistance contract that's issued to the landlord and stays with the property. So you can move into this apartment community that has a Section 8 contract, and your rent will be paid. You'll pay 30% of your income toward the rent, and then the rest of it will be picked up by the Section 8 contract. You just don't get to take that with you when you move somewhere else. You can only use that in that unit. When you move out, the next person that lives in that apartment receives it.
Okay.
All of those programs, you can find information about them on our website at affordablehousingonline.com. If you just go there, type in the area you're searching for, and then you scroll down, you're going to see all those types of housing assistance programs. So
awesome.
Keep looking. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ivana.
Bye-bye.
Okay, let's see. We're going to try and bring in Anna Lopez, and I've got Denasia Chisholm and Olga Button that I'm going to try and bring in after that. Anna Lopez. While I'm trying to connect with Anna, please don't forget to follow us on Blab so you can get notified whenever we come online. All you have to do is up here, this little man here with the plus button. Click that right now for me. Just click it right now. It doesn't hurt to click it. And whenever you click it, I get a notice over here on my screen. I want to see some people clicking it. There we go. Thank you. Blab, hey, look at that. Look at all these people following us. Perfect. Blab has a great new feature this week that I noticed. And that feature allows me to send you a notice as soon as I go online that I'm going online. So today, for example, we have 65 followers on Blab. Well, not now. We have a lot more since everybody just responded to my request. We have 65 followers on Blab. When I clicked that button when I first started, you all got a notice that I'm online. So if you like what I'm saying, you want to participate every week. I do this every week at officially 3 o'clock. You guys got early entrance. Just follow me right there. See that button? Yeah, right there. Click. And you'll get a notice. Okay, Anna, still trying to connect you. Looks like you've got a poor connection. I'm going to move on to Denasia, try and get her in, and I'll just go ahead. I got 4 seats here. I'll try and connect all 3 of you and figure out if I can get somebody in. Olga, it says audio only. Are you there? No, Olga, I don't hear you. Okay, Denasia trying to connect you, and Anna still trying to connect you. While we're attempting to connect with the 3 of you, I'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Let's see. Okay. How do you find the market rate for rent for an area? I live in an affordable housing complex. So when I assume that question is generally what should you expect to pay in the open market for rent if you're just going to go and try and find a run-of-the-mill 2-bedroom apartment. What am I going to pay? I don't want luxury, just an average to good neighborhood, basic features. What am I going to pay? And that to get specifically to a dollar amount is difficult and As a developer of affordable housing, I pay thousands of dollars to get that number for a market. If I'm proposing to build a new apartment community, I have to go out and hire a market analyst to do a bunch of research, to make calls to 15 to 30 affordable housing communities in the area to figure out what the rent they're asking for, what are the amenities they're providing. They make adjustments on what the monthly rent should be, to come up with what the market rent is. With that being said, HUD every year establishes something called a fair market rent, which is probably the best measure that you as a renter are going you're going to be able to use quickly to just go out and get an idea. So if you're moving across the country and you live in a place in Texas where rents are only $500, you may not know. If you're thinking about taking a job in Albuquerque, you may not know, are the rents the same? How do I compare salary offers, whatever. So my recommendation is, again, and we try to make sure that we're providing as many resources as possible to our users, and we have a resource for this, is go to Affordable Housing Online, in the search box, type in your city and state, your county and state, and we provide the fair market rents for that area that's been established by HUD. We update them every year when HUD updates them. They're broken down by bedroom size. So, and fair market rents are usually established at an MSA level, metropolitan statistical area. So they're not usually just a city level. So if, for example, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, you're going to see the same rents for Arlington, Virginia, that you're going to see for one of the Bethesda, Maryland. They're in the same MSA. So the fair market rents are going to be the same. That doesn't mean that rents are the same in Bethesda and Arlington. So you have to keep that in mind. But again, the only way to get really granular and find out the market rent, actually do some research. Now, you can also do some research on your own, kind of like that market analyst does for me, and just call around, look up on the internet and, typical market rate properties that you think are, that are meeting your requirements, and find out what their rents are for the unit type that you're looking for, and then average that out. If you have one property that's 700 and another one that's 800, another one that's 750, and call 5 or 10 of them, and then establish an average, and there you have your basic market rent. You know what to expect. And so then if you're looking at a private rental where someone might have one apartment available, you can kind of keep that landlord honest to make sure that the rent amount is fair. So I hope I answered that question. Okay, how can you find out what number you are on the waiting list for public housing? Well, that's a tough question to answer, because public housing is administered by individual housing authorities, not HUD. And there are over, if I'm not mistaken, several, a lot more than 3,000 different housing authorities across the country that have public housing programs that manage waiting lists for public housing. Some of them are very progressive and have great data systems that you can log into and find out where you're at on the waiting list every day if you want to. Every morning you could wake up, log in, and find out how many positions you moved up or down on that waiting list. Others are paper-based applications. They won't pick up the phone, they won't respond to letters, and you won't know for years where you're on the waiting list until they actually call you. That's how far apart we are in this country with public housing waiting list management. And unless HUD, it was to impose some requirement on every public housing authority to provide a better means of communication with you, the renter, that's the way it's going to be. So the answer to your question is, how do you find out? It depends on your housing authority. The first place you should start is that housing authority's website. About 75% of housing authorities now have websites. About 20% of those websites are actually good and provide good user experiences where you're going to find the information you're looking for. But really, that's the best place to start. And then if that doesn't help, or if you don't find the information on the website, or they don't have one, then call the housing authority and try and ask them, how do I find out where I am on the waiting list? Now, remember that there's usually thousands of people on these waiting lists, and the housing authority gets inundated with these requests. So they actually may have a policy where they just say, we don't tell you where you're on the waiting list. Don't worry, you'll hear from us when your name comes up. Unfortunately, I don't like that policy, but I understand why, because they're not provided administrative resources to provide that level of service. Again, if HUD would start requiring the use of software for public housing and housing choice voucher waiting list management, which the software is out there, if HUD would start requiring that, it would make it easier for everyone all the way around. So hopefully that answered your question. So I'm going to move on to the next one. I just contacted Boulder Housing, and they said I couldn't apply to a 3-bedroom unit as one person. Next week, I saw the same property available for a 1-bedroom unit. I have 2 sons. What do they need to do to sign up for subsidized apartments? They have low or no income. All right, I saw the same property available for a 1-person unit. I have 2 sons. Okay, I'm a little bit confused. Definitely, if you're just one person, you can't apply for a 3-bedroom unit, whether it's project-based Section 8, tax credits, or public housing. That's called overhousing. It's providing too many housing resources to your household. So you cannot apply if there's an apartment community in your neighborhood that advertises that there's an opening and it's a subsidized community and you're just one person and it's a 3-bedroom apartment, you don't qualify. But the confusing part is you said you have 2 sons. And so a 3-person household could technically qualify for a 3-bedroom unit, though many times they'll ask you to have your sons share bedrooms. So it's just 2. What do they need to do to sign up for subsidized apartments? That leads me to think that maybe your sons are older. And if that's the case, and they're not going to be living with you, then they'd have to apply separately as individuals on their own. So I hope that answered your question. All right, I do have a couple of people requesting to come in, so let's see if we can get somebody connected. So I got Jessica Freeman. Let's see if we can get you connected, Jessica. And then again at 3 o'clock, I'm going to do we'll run through the open waiting list. We have a few on the board behind me. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. What kind of housing question do you have for me today?
Well, I have been placed on, I guess, a few waiting lists. But sometimes it's like a lottery, and I guess I don't get picked or I don't hear back. Like, how do I follow up with them?
Okay. Good question. Very, very common issue. So usually if you are placed on the waiting list, so for example, when they start a lottery, when they advertise the lottery, they will tell you that they'll send you a positive notification that you're on the waiting list, right? And that if you're not placed on the waiting list, you won't hear anything. Sometimes they'll say that, and sometimes they won't. If you didn't hear anything out of them, and it was an online waiting list, in all likelihood, you weren't placed on the waiting list if it was a lottery. I wish they would send a notice to everybody. It doesn't cost anything for them to send an email to you saying, sorry, you weren't selected. And many do, but not all of them do. So it's kind of hard to know that. But what I would recommend is make sure you're logging every one of them that you apply to. And many of them will give you login credentials. If it's an online application, it'll give you a username and a password that you can log into. And many of those systems actually tell you if you're on the list, if you were not on the list. It'll tell you where you are on the list, and it'll give you the ability to change your contact information. Now, that's the next thing I want to talk about is you must make sure your contact information remains up to date. If you move, if you're away for a couple of weeks and a letter comes asking you to confirm your contact information or even come in for an interview and you don't respond, usually in 2 weeks they don't get a response from you. They'll purge you from the waiting list, and then you're back to square one. You have to wait until the waiting list opens up again. So make sure that you're always keeping your contact information updated. Again, if it's an online application, that's easy. Usually you have a login portal that you go to where you can change it. If it's not, they may sometimes on their website have a form where you fill it out for a change of information. And then, worse yet, is it might be that you have to call them and update your information. I'll touch on, if it's a mail-in application, finding out where you're on the waiting list is even harder still, because they probably wrote your name on a piece of paper and that's the waiting list. And I've seen them. I mean, they are like scribbles, and your name is literally on a piece of paper, usually smaller housing authorities with a date next to it. And sometimes there's highlighters and lines drawn through if somebody doesn't end up qualifying. And it's sometimes really hard to find out your status on those types of waiting lists because you're not just calling them and asking. You've got to actually convince somebody to go to the file folder and pull it out. So the answer to your question is it's all over the place.
Yeah, because I've seen that it's sometimes taking me, like my best friend, we applied at the same time. And she's gotten it for 2 different places, got approved for 2 different places before me. But one of the ladies told her that it was because I need a 4-bedroom. I would get a 4-bedroom voucher, where she is getting a 3-bedroom voucher. And they told her that is one of the hiccups that's taking my voucher longer to get, because of the fact that I need a bigger voucher.
Absolutely. That is absolutely going to slow down the amount. It's going to increase the amount of time you have to wait because, for example, in the private market or in an apartment community, forget about the voucher program for a second. In an apartment community, the typical size of an apartment is 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. It's very rare to find an apartment with 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms, or even studio, zero bedrooms, which is a studio, unless you're in the city. But even then, the number of 0 bedrooms is usually pretty small, and the number of 4 and 5 bedrooms is really small too. So if let's say that there was a 6-month wait for a 1-bedroom apartment at that property, and that property has 100 1-bedroom apartments, it may only have 3 4-bedroom apartments. So that's why the waits can be longer.
Should I not put one of my kids, because even now I normally live in 3-bedroom properties. I've never stayed in a 4-bedroom. I've always stayed in a 3. So how many
kids do you have?
I have 4.
Okay.
But it's a gap in between. Like I have a 13-year-old who's really old, and then I have a 5 and a 6-year-old boys, and then I have a 2-year-old girl.
Okay.
So
yeah.
When I went to apply for housing with one place, she said she couldn't even put me in a 3 just because of the age gaps in between my kids and the difference. My daughter was a boy and she wasn't a girl. I could try to appeal, get a 3-bedroom, but because she's a little girl, they cannot put her in the bedroom with her brother.
I think those rules are somewhat flexible and often enforced differently by different housing authorities, I think. And I'll take a look. I cannot specifically answer your question. I'll take a look at the regulations to see at the HUD level, at the federal level, what's it say about kids and their ages and their sex and who can share a room. I mean, if you're a family of 5, but you have you and 4 kids, math would say that two kids could share a room. So, you'd have 2 and 2, and then you're in the third bedroom. But I have heard of cases like yours where they don't want to pair a boy and a girl, especially if there's age gaps. But I think in recent history, in the last couple of years, those policies have begun to loosen a little bit. So let me do some more research, and I'll post a better response to you on that in the next week or so.
Yeah, because like I told the one lady, I said I didn't even have a problem. My daughter sleeps in my room now. Like, she sleeps with me. She has her own bed and everything in my room, so that wouldn't be a problem. But sometimes it's like really hard to even get anybody like on the phone to get any information, because like I've been on a waiting list in Pennsylvania. I applied in October, and I started off at like 11,000 or something like that, and I'm down to about 34. I think I'm like 3,400 now. My best friend, she was at like 75, closer to 8,000, and she's actually gotten hers. She got her voucher the other last month or earlier this month. She got it. So it's soon to come up. They just said that it normally takes about a year and a half when you need a 4-bedroom there to get it. Versus for the 3 bedrooms, they come up in less than a year. Like, you're on the waiting list there for less than a year.
Yeah,
so I just don't.
It's going to be. I think it's going to. I think that it's going to be. First of all, it's going to be different from housing authority. The housing authority is going to be just a little bit different, perhaps, the way they enforce and interpret the policy. Remember that there's federal policy that the housing authority has to follow, and then they have a lot of latitude at the local level. And there's also the interpretation. There's also the interpretation of what the various regulations are at the local level. So you might want to, every time you look at a different housing authority, you may kind of look, or maybe even ask how they would address kids and different age gaps and their sexes. But I'll do some more research and see if I can give you a better answer too, and we'll post it on our blog.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Okay, yep, you're welcome. All right, so Olga and Anna are still trying to call in. I'm going to try and accept their calls, but we have in the past not been able to get them through. And if I can't connect them right now, I think I'll go ahead. Nate, if you want to bring up the openings for me, I'll go ahead and announce our research for this week, what we found. Yeah, I'm sorry, Olga and Anna, it looks like your internet connections may be too slow to actually be able to call in. So if you want to post your questions in the comments, and Nate will make sure they get in front of me. Again, I'm David Layfield. If you're just joining us with Affordable Housing Online, and I do this talk show every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Sometimes I start early if I've got the time. I did so today. And if you like what I'm talking about, if it's informative, if you want to hear more about it, you want to be notified whenever I come on, I want you to right now hit this little man right here. There's a little plus button right there. If you hit that, you'll follow me on Blab. And then the next time I go live, you'll get a notice. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for following me on Blab. You'll get a notice whenever I come on, and then you can join us. There, we got a couple more. Okay, so if you don't know this, and we've got about 137,000 Facebook fans that follow us and get updated daily. If you don't know this, we have a team here at Affordable Housing Online that monitors Section 8 waiting list openings across the country. Even if you live in a city that opens a Section 8 waiting list, sometimes you don't know about it. We often have folks that ask us via Facebook or other channels, when does my blank city open up? And we have to say, unfortunately, it was open last month, and it was open for the first time in 5 years, and it probably won't open again in 5 years. And that person lives in that city, has lived in that city, and was unaware of it, because usually the housing authorities don't go out of their way to make sure that every low-income person in the market knows about it. They'll issue a notice in the newspaper. They'll post it on their website. They may notify a few nonprofit organizations in the area, but they're not going to go out of their way to market that opening. So there's a good chance that you won't find out about it. Well, we here at Affordable Housing Online have curated a database of over 420 open Section 8 waiting lists. We issue notices, alerts on Facebook and email and Google Plus and Twitter whenever we find a new waiting list that's scheduled to open up for a few days. And then every week I do this blab, and we send out an email summarizing the ones that we found. So I've got a couple I'm going to talk about now, and I'll start with Housing Authority of the City of Baytown. Their Section 8 voucher waiting list program is opening for 1 day, just 1 day, on October 15th from 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Baytown's about 25 miles east of Houston, so it's not very far from a fairly large market. And to apply, you have to submit a pre-application in person. And we provide the location, the details of where you should be, that address. They're going to be placing 500 qualified applicants on the waiting list by random lottery. So it's important you get your application in that day. And Nate, can you go back to that screen for me? And so if you want to get more detail, if you go to Nate's going to publish a link over here in the comments later on when we're finished to the Housing Authority of the City of Baytown. You can just go to that listing, and we'll provide you all the details on that opening. So. All right, Nate, how about the next one? So we have the Housing Authority of the City of New Britain, Connecticut, and that's in Hartford County, Connecticut. The Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is opening from October 13th to October 16th. And New Britain's about 10 miles southwest of Hartford. To apply, you have to download and print the pre-application. We have a link to that on our site. Again, we'll post a link to the New Britain Housing Authority page. The application is available in English and Spanish. Now, the website doesn't load on Google Chrome for some reason. It took us a while to figure that out. So you want to use one of the other browsers other than Google Chrome. And again, just like every Housing Choice Voucher program, there's only one application allowed per household. Once the pre-application has been completed, it must be mailed to the Housing Authority. We have the address. That information is all on the New Britain page that we'll link to. And pre-applications postmarked before or after the opening date will not be accepted. This is really important. And pre-applications postmarked before or after the opening date will not be accepted. That means that you must mail the application on October 13th, 14th, 15th, or 16th. You can't mail it on the 12th or the 10th. Remember that. If it says that the application must be mailed, or it cannot be mailed before the opening date, that it doesn't, it's kind of counterintuitive. Okay, I'm just going to get this done early and get it in. Well, they're not actually not going to honor it if it's postmarked before then. So make sure that when you take it to the post office, the date that they put on the front of that envelope is either the 13th, 14th, 15th, or 16th. They will be placing 1,000 applicants on the waiting list by random lottery. And when you're placed on the waiting list, you will be notified by mail. This goes back to a comment I made to an earlier caller, and that is that if you aren't selected for the lottery, you probably won't be notified. I guarantee you they're not going to notify you. So be looking for that letter, and you'll know that you're on the list. All right, Nate, what's next? Tennessee Housing Development Agency. So the Tennessee Housing Development Agency. Okay, sorry, go ahead down. So the Warren County is opening up from October 1st at 6 a.m. until October 5th at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Now, let me talk a little bit about this type of opening. And so Tennessee, this is the state housing agency that's managing this, and whenever there's a rural area, like a rural county that doesn't have a local organization or local housing authority that can manage a housing choice voucher program, that's usually picked up at the state level by a housing agency. So the Tennessee Housing Development Authority Agency, I think that's the name of it, will be the one. Yeah, the Tennessee Housing Development Agency manages a bunch of different waiting lists all over the state. They do that, and just about every state, the state agency does have a bunch of rural areas that there aren't any other housing authorities for. So this is one of those, and the Warren County waiting list, again, opening up from October 1st to October 5th. To apply, you complete an online pre-application, and we link to that. It will be available during the opening period. Usually, when you go to that link. Outside of the opening period, you won't see anything. And if you don't have access to the internet, they recommend you go to a local library. And then all the other South Central Tennessee office waiting lists are currently closed, so it's just Warren County. All right, the last one I want to talk about, one of my favorite places to visit, been there once, it was a great experience, is Maui, Hawaii. We've seen waiting lists in Hawaii open up every few years. I think Honolulu, Oahu opened up last year, the year before. So we've got the county of Maui, which is the whole island of Maui. Its Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is opening from October 26th at 8:30 a.m. Hawaii time, which is like 9 hours, I think, off of Eastern time. Tough flight, very tough flight. Until November 8th, 2015 at 11:59 p.m. Hawaii time. We became aware of this opening from a news site, and we've linked to that in our post. And we've contacted the housing authority to confirm this opening, and we haven't been able to get back. But we believe that the news service is legitimate, and this is a legitimate opening worth reporting on. To apply, there's an online application that we link to. Qualified applicants will be placed on the waiting list by random lottery. We haven't gotten enough details on that random lottery yet, but we'll make sure they get posted to Affordable Housing Online when we learn about them. And Nate will also, when this is all over, add a link to the Maui County page over in the comments. And so those are the 4 waiting lists that I'm highlighting this week. We have them listed here, but remember, there's 420 some out there that are open. Some are open all the time. Some are smaller ones scheduled to open. Some have been open for a while. So I'd recommend that you go out and take a look at our list and see if there's anything near you or a waiting list that you'd be willing to, an area you'd be willing to move close to. So I'll go back to answering questions, and I've got an open seat here. If you don't know how this works, there you go. Karen's asking to come and sit and ask me a question. I'm happy to do so. Karen, I'm gonna try and bring you in. If anybody else wants to ask a question, just hit that join now, or I think it's a plus button and join. Hit that button. Remember, if you have poor bandwidth or a slow internet connection, sometimes we won't be able to connect, but we'll keep trying. And so in the meantime, while I'm trying to connect Karen, I'm going to come over here on the side and take a look at some of the questions that came in and see if there's something I can answer in the meantime. Again, I have until about 4 o'clock. I'm willing to hang out and answer questions until 4. So if you have a question, make sure you post it in the comments and we'll get to it. So next, let's see. If you never received a termination letter, can you be evicted from your Section 8 unit due to non-payment of rent? So I believe that the simple answer to that question is yes. So the termination letter, that leads me to think that you're asking, and you know, if you're live right now, if the person who asked that question, if you're live right now in the blab, if you would respond to me down in the comments that my assumption is correct, and then I'll try and address it. But the termination letter that you're referring to, I think you're asking if you don't get a termination letter from the housing authority for your Section 8 voucher, can you be evicted by the landlord due to non-payment of rent? So the answer to that question is absolutely yes, you can. When you have Section 8, you have a lease with a landlord, and everything is the same. That is a lease that you have with a private landlord, and it doesn't matter if your rent's $30 a month, if your tenant contribution is $30 a month. If you don't pay that landlord the $30 a month, you're defaulting on your lease, and that gives him reason to evict you. So though Section 8 may not have sent you a termination letter, the landlord can certainly evict you. And this can it's like a house of cards. If you don't pay that $30 or $200 or whatever your tenant contribution is, if you don't pay that on time, you don't meet the requirements of your lease, that's also going to affect your eligibility for the voucher. If you get evicted, you stand to lose your voucher altogether. So make sure you're always paying your rent. Now, there's also typically plenty of remedies available. You know, if you're late on your rent and you get an eviction notice, you have a remedy under the law. And usually the housing authority is of course going to follow the law, and actually, you know, they might also encourage the landlord to work with you on that. So, but make sure you always pay your rent on time. Even that, you know, your tenant contribution, it may not seem like a big deal if the rent's $700 and the landlord's getting a check from the Section 8 office for $650, and you only have to pay $50, and you think the $50 isn't a big deal to him. It is, because it's your commitment to that property. It's your commitment, you know, to contribute toward your housing, even if it's a small amount, and it's certainly a case for eviction. So anyway, I hope that answered your question. Okay, moving on, and the questions are piling up faster than I can answer them, but in the meantime, I'm going to try and bring Karen back in. Karen, let's see if we can connect with you this time. It's always better if you're on Wi-Fi, everyone. 3G and 4G broadband connections are more difficult, so try and come in via Wi-Fi. If you're just joining me and this information is valuable for you, oh, hey, Karen.
Hi.
All right. How you doing?
Okay. I'm good, thank you. What I want to know is, I live in Arizona, and I'm trying to move back to Ohio, but I'm living in a HUD housing here, and I know HUD does not transfer, right?
Can you define HUD housing? Is it public housing? Is it a project-based property?
It's a public apartment, housing apartment.
So your landlord is a housing authority?
Yes, it used to be for senior citizens, low income, disabled, but as recently is for anyone that can sign their name on a piece of paper. They have let any type of people move in here, and I'm not used to living like that. I would like to come back to Ohio, where I'm originally from, but I would like to know, would this public housing transfer with me, or do I have to reapply once I get back to Ohio?
No, it will not transfer. So if you're in a traditional public housing community that's owned by a housing authority, that is not a transferable type of subsidy. The only transferable subsidy we have in the U.S. is the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So you would have to apply if you're looking for similar living arrangements in Ohio, but of course you want to make sure you go to a senior property, a senior public housing facility. Sounds like it was senior, and perhaps they didn't have enough seniors and had to open it up to increase the occupancy level. They may have had to open it up to everyone and sort of bringing in families. That's normally what happens there. And obviously, if you signed up to live in a senior community, it's quieter.
Right.
There's less going on, and obviously, it's kind of a little bit of a change of lifestyle for you. So I can understand you wanting to make a change, but you kind of going to have to go through the process all over again and finding a place and getting on the waiting list. Fortunately, Nate, we've got Ohio done, don't we? So. Over the last 6 months or so, we embarked on a pretty ambitious research project, and the public housing portfolio in the country is not well cataloged, and we decided that we wanted to find out every single public housing waiting list that was open or closed. We wanted to know the status. We have a team that calls all day long public housing authorities, finding out about their waiting list statuses. And I can tell you that we have completed Ohio. So we have a list of Ohio public housing waiting lists that are open. It's broken down by senior and elderly, senior and family, and then other. Sometimes they have some special waiting lists. And is there a specific place in Ohio you want to go to, or you open to many areas?
No, but what I want to know, on a lot of the applications that I'm seeing, they're saying that I need to come in for an interview. There's no way I could keep flying back and forth from Arizona to Ohio to do interviews or to pay an application fee for some of these other apartments that I've seen. Is there a way that I can avoid coming in for an interview for housing?
Okay. A lot of information there. Let me unpack it one piece at a time. First of all, remember, for public housing, you never have to pay an application fee. It is against the law for a public housing facility to charge you an application fee, the same as it is for a housing choice voucher. So if it's a public housing community managed by a public housing authority, HUD regulations prohibit a application fee. Now, privately owned properties like project-based Section 8, low-income housing tax credit, or properties that don't have any subsidies and they do that so that they can pay for the credit check that they do, the criminal background check that they do. But HUD's position on application fees is, and they've reiterated this over and over again, is that the public housing authority is getting all sorts of administrative fees to manage that unit, and included in that administrative fee is the cost of credit and criminal background checks. So I just want to set that aside, that you shouldn't be asked to pay a fee if you're simply looking for public housing. Now, there are other opportunities out there, like the Section 202 program, and if you're 62 or older or you're disabled, the Section 202 program is a private program it's a HUD program, but it provides subsidy to private landlords to provide lower income seniors housing opportunities, and these are almost exclusively seniors. There'll never be anyone under 62 there. And these properties tend to have waiting lists too, but they're a lot shorter, many times a lot shorter than definitely the Housing Choice Voucher Program, and sometimes even the public housing program. So you should look into those. Now, the travel thing. I understand that when they say you have to come in for an interview, it's going to be problematic to keep coming back and forth. And the only thing I can tell you is to start out the conversation with them and explain, hey, I'm from Ohio. I love Ohio. I grew up in Ohio. I want to come back to Ohio, but I don't have the money to keep coming there. I have enough money for a plane ticket, but I need to consolidate all these interviews that I have with different, housing authorities and landlords into one trip. Can you work with me on this? Can you be more flexible? I think that if you just have a conversation with them, they may be willing to work with you on that. A lot of times with the Housing Choice Voucher Program, they're going to call you, or they're going to send you a letter, and they're going to say, if you want this voucher, show up at this address at this date and time, and option to change. I think in your case, you might be able to talk with the housing authority or the landlords on a more human level and try and get some accommodation on the schedule.
Okay. Another question. I don't know if this has to do with public housing is I have a companion dog because I need her. And a lot of it, not the public housing, but just regular landlord housing or housing apartments, they say animals are not accepted, or I have to pay a $200 application fee and $20 a month. Does that apply in the public housing too, that I still have to pay an application fee and a monthly fee for her? Or since she's my companion dog, when I apply for just a regular apartment, will I still have to pay an application fee for her?
Right.
I have paperwork saying she is a companion dog to me because I need her.
Right. Okay. So this is a gray area, right? So it's very, the law is very clear on service animals. If you have a bona fide handicap that requires an animal, they're not a pet. They are technically not a pet. They're called a service animal. If you have a handicap that requires for your daily functioning to be independent, if you're required to have that animal help you cross the street or make sure that you're not walking into the stove, whatever, legally they can't tell you that's not allowed. And especially in federally subsidized properties like a public housing community. You get down to a companion animal, and so that's a little different. A companion animal is where the doctor says that my patient suffers from anxiety or some other type of thing that an animal will improve your quality of life. They're called companion animals, and your doctor may say, this is good, this animal is good for her. She really needs this to improve her quality of life. That's different from a simple pet. Now, in public housing, and I'm going to verify this, I'm pretty sure that in public housing and other forms of federally subsidized housing, companion animals must be accepted. I don't know for sure whether or not they're allowed to charge pet deposits and pet fees or pet rents. I'll check that. Nate, if you want to make a note, we'll follow up with you, Karen, to make sure that we're giving you some good information. But for the most part, in federally subsidized properties, I know in the federally subsidized properties that I own, we allow companion animals for the most part, but unless you're bringing a Great Dane. I hope no. It's not a Great Dane, is it, Karen?
No, it's a Chihuahua.
Oh,
she's really a Chiweenie, but she's my lifesaver. She has saved my life several different times. So my therapist told me that I need a companion dog. Okay. So I got her, and she has saved me. And when I move, I don't want to get rid of her because I wouldn't make it without her.
Right. And no one wants to get rid of their pet. I mean, if I was told that I had to get rid of, I had 2 dogs, and if I was told I would have to get rid of them to move, I think I'd find a way to stay where I am. So I think that you're in a gray area that I'm not going to be able to answer definitively for you. But we're going to do some more research and we'll get back to you. And then I would just recommend every time you talk to a potential landlord or public housing authority, just ask them about a companion animal. It's a lot better if your therapist has written the letter.
Yes.
And if they haven't, make sure that that you have a letter, make sure that you have it in email, digital form, so you can just send it to somebody if you have to on the fly, that says that therapeutically, Karen needs this. And in fact, it's been this Chiweenie has been a lifesaver for her in the past. And, we highly encourage any prospective landlords to consider this when looking at her application.
Okay, like the apartment that I'm in right now, they had that on file, and I did not have to pay a deposit, and I do not have to pay a monthly rent for her because of her being a companion. And I was just, because I'm sorry, because in Ohio, as I was looking, everyone was offering that. But here in Arizona, no one said anything. If she's companion, they're more or less saying she's acceptable anywhere. I could take her to the grocery store, to restaurants. It's just certain places that I do take her like that because I have other people that help me with that situation.
Okay. Well, here's an idea too. I think that you should do. It sounds like you have a good relationship with the management office there at your current property. It maybe ask them to write a letter saying that Karen and her Chweenie have been great residents. There's never been any damage. Whenever we do inspections, the apartment's very clean. She takes good care of the dog. The dog's never interfered with the safe living of other residents. If he or she, the property manager, would write a letter for you, that might actually help a little bit when you go to the new landlord as well. Because they always like to check references. In fact, most of the time when you apply, you're putting down who your current landlord is, and they're going to call them and ask them. So if you're bringing a letter saying, hey, look, I have a companion animal. My therapist says I need it. Here's that letter. And my current landlord, whom I've rented from for many years, has also written a letter saying that this animal is great. Now, the problem is that if they have a blanket policy that says no companion animals, only service animals are permitted, they're going to have to enforce that policy on everyone, or they could be accused of some sort of discrimination. So you may, if they have a published blanket policy like that, then you're going to have a problem, because it doesn't matter how good of a tenant you have been. It doesn't matter how good of a letter your therapist wrote. If it's classified as a companion animal and they say no companion animals, as soon as they allow you, then they're going to have to allow everybody else. So it's going to be on a case by case basis.
Okay, this is my first time on here, and I was trying to leave a comment, and as I typed it in, there's no way for me to send it. So how do I do that next time I need to leave a comment?
It's supposed to be easier this way, but it's less intuitive, and all you do is hit enter.
Okay,
I had the same problem. Just hit the enter button on your keyboard.
Oh, my keyboard. Okay, because I was looking on the screen and I kept saying, okay, there's no enter. There's no enter. So I didn't know how. I got through.
Don't feel bad. I did the same thing, and I'm pretty sure.
All right, that's all I need to know.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. I have Deb waiting to come in. I'm going to try and connect you, Deb. It's 3:30. I've got a bunch of questions over on the right, but I got Deb trying to come in. I'm going to try and get this wrapped up by 4. So Deb, let's see if we can connect you. And while I'm connecting Deb, if my show is worthwhile and you want to watch it again next week, I want you to right now to come over here. Let me see. Right there. There's a little button with a man and a plus. Just click that button, and
what button?
You will. Hi, Deb.
Hi, but I don't know what I'm doing here.
Do you have a housing question?
Yes.
So then just
I see.
Everything's great. Yep.
Yeah, I did write down a question, and that is, oh God, I look awful. I'm on state disability.
Okay.
I moved into this home when the gentleman here was still my boyfriend. We are not intimate. That relationship has ended.
Okay.
And
okay. And so your question,
I think last night or the other day, he gave me a 30-day to vacate the premises. Okay. But I have nowhere to go. And
okay. So let me start with a couple of questions. Are you?
Why can't I hear you anymore?
I can hear you just fine. So if everybody can hear me, would you hit the props button down on the bottom right? Make sure my audio is still working. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So Deb, if you can't hear me, check the volume on your computer. Can you hear me now? I hate that phrase, but it works. Now we can't hear you, Deb. Okay. I think I have enough information to answer your question. Hopefully you can hear me. We don't have your audio, but I'm going to go ahead and answer it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I think I have enough information to get started. First of all, are you on the lease for the house you're in?
Oh no, this is his.
No. Okay. And the 30-day to vacate notice was not issued by the landlord, but it was issued by your roommate.
Well, if you want to call him that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll call him your roommate. All right. So
and I haven't been paying rent. Because
okay. No, I understand. This is a common issue. First of all, the 30-day notice, there's probably nothing very legal one way or the other about it, since you don't have a lease. It may well depend on domestic policy in your state, what happens there. But obviously you want to get out of that situation. It's uncomfortable. You want to get out of it as soon as possible.
It's abusive.
Okay. So I would recommend, and first of all, Deb,
and I'm 60. I'm not a spring chicken anymore.
Okay, Deb, I'd rather we conduct this offline. There's 30 some people where this is online on the open internet right now. And if it's an abusive relationship, I'd rather try and help you offline.
Okay.
So can you send me, our Nate will reach out to you through your Twitter, and why don't I see if I can give you a little bit of guidance that way instead of doing this in public.
Okay.
All right. And if we can do that tomorrow, I'll write up a little several paragraphs of what I think your options are, and then you and I can correspond by email that way.
Via Twitter? Because signed.
So, do me a favor. Send me an email right now, and Nate will get it and pass it on to me at info at.
Wait a minute.
Okay,
I'm dyslexic. It takes me a little while.
Take your time.
Info at
apartment smart.
Spelled out.
Apartment, yep, spelled out. Smart.com.
Apartment smart, SMART.
SMART.com. And there's lots of resources. I will, in the morning when I get back in the office, because I have to run in about 25 minutes. When I get back in the office in the morning, I'll write a nice response for you with what I think your options are. But I
thank you so much.
That in private. Okay, thank you, Deb.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So Sue Grigger, I'm going to try and connect you in. And while Sue is connecting, I've got a bunch of questions over on the right. I've got about 25 more minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to plug this again. If you like what I'm doing here, there's this little plus button right here next to the man. If you hit that right now, you'll follow us on Blab. And then whenever we Blab, whenever I go live answering questions, you'll get a notice that I'm on, and you can jump on with us. And there we go. See, I'm getting notices that Daryl Frazier just followed us on Blab, and it looks like now I've got Sue on audio only. Sue, are you there? Sue, are you there? Okay, so with poor internet signals, sometimes we can't get video, and sometimes we even can't get audio. Looks like, Sue, you may be coming in from a broadband connection. I'm gonna remind my friends at Blab, who have this wonderful platform that we love. That's probably one of the biggest weaknesses for us. We lose, I would say, 3 out of 4 callers to poor internet signals. And I know that they can't fix the internet, but maybe if we can figure out how to do a low bandwidth audio only stream, that would help at least least get have the ability to talk to folks. So Sue, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to connect. I'm going to go ahead and boot you, and maybe we can try you back again. I would recommend trying to find a Wi-Fi connection somewhere. All right, Nate, let's see where am I going with the next question? What does the HUD size designation number mean on the open list? Okay, sometimes we design an interface and we don't think to explain it so well. The question is about our open Section 8 waiting list page, where we list all the open waiting lists, and we have a size column that tells you how large the voucher program is. And that number, and in the question it says extra large 1,250 to 9,999. That's the number of vouchers that they manage. And then so HUD classifies housing authorities by very small, medium, large, whatever, and it's based on the number of vouchers they manage. So we added that column just to give you a sense of how many vouchers that housing authority has. If they have 70 vouchers, and believe it or not, there's housing authorities in America that only manage 50 or 60 vouchers. It's going to be hard when we send our 2,000 users to go apply. That waiting list is going to end up being 200 years long. So it's important for you to know about how many vouchers that housing authority has. If it's a much larger housing authority, there's a lot more opportunity. There's also a larger city that may increase the wait time, but that's what that means. And hopefully I answered the question. All right, I got a voucher, but they say I can't use it in the state that issued it. So I don't completely understand that question. If you have a voucher, first of all, vouchers they're not by state, they're issued by a specific housing authority. Even if it's a statewide agency, it's usually issued for a specific area in the state. So, asking the way the question is structured, saying that you can't use it in the state doesn't begin to make sense to me. So, and then as far as not being able to use it, a housing choice voucher, you're supposed to be able to use it anywhere in the country. It's called the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which means you have the choice to take that voucher with you anywhere you go. And there's a process called portability, porting in, porting out, where if you have a voucher and you want or need to move and anywhere in the country that has a voucher program, that you should be able to take that housing subsidy and transfer it to the other housing authority. I've talked about portability often. We've answered several questions about that. So I don't really, if you can provide us a little more detail as to why they're telling us you can't use it, but honestly, that doesn't make sense. You should be able to use it. So if you can give us more feedback, I'll try and answer that further. Okay, how can I know the waiting list in Framingham, Mass? I called them and they said this is a long wait, but how can I know if I am on the program? So if you think you've applied to that waiting list before, the best way is to try and get them to tell you. In fact, it's really the only way. If they're unwilling to, maybe you reach out to, write them a letter. If that doesn't work, try and reach out to the executive director. If it's affiliated with a city, write a letter to the mayor. If you're a resident of that city, write a letter to your city council member that represents you. Write a letter to HUD. There are multiple means by which you can try and get their attention, but they're really the only ones that have the information. HUD doesn't have the information. HUD doesn't know where you are on the waiting list. They don't know that you're on the waiting list. The only ones that know that you're on the waiting list is that housing authority. So you're going to have to figure out how to get that information from them. And unfortunately, with some of the smaller housing authorities that are light on technology, it might be on a piece of paper somewhere, and they may not want to have to go look it up. So they may push you off. I would just be persistent and keep asking. Okay. Next question. I'm a 64-year-old divorced single man on SSI who has to move from my daughter's house. I live in New Jersey, and I have filled out tons of forms for both Section 8 voucher programs in many states. I am just wondering if I'm wasting my time filling out applications in states I don't live in. Also, can you guide me as to what else I can do to find housing? Okay, so no, you're not wasting your time. You're absolutely not wasting your time. We hear every day from users that have used our information, our free information that we publish daily, to find housing assistance opportunities elsewhere in other states. So I would recommend you keep applying. If there is a location like Maui's opening up. If there's a place that you would like to move to, I recommend that you apply there. And you may run into a market area, and you might run into a city or county that actually has a much shorter wait time than New Jersey. I can tell you, New Jersey, it's really tough. The waiting lists in New Jersey are really long. So there's plenty of other places in the country that has a much shorter wait than in New Jersey. So you should keep applying. Now, on the issue of what other types of assistance, I talked earlier about the low-income housing tax credit program, the project-based Section 8 assistance program, the HUD Section 202 program. If you're 64, you're eligible for the 202 program. You're eligible for the USDA Section 515 program. And that's a program in rural America and small towns that have these little 20, 30, 40 unit apartment communities. Many of them are elderly only. They have rental assistance, which is very similar to project-based Section 8. So there's all sorts of opportunities, and I would recommend, and not to self-promote, but we work really hard to try and get all of that information in one place for you. So I would recommend using our site, affordablehousingonline.com. Nate's going to post the link. And when you get to the homepage, just enter in the place where you're thinking about moving to. And you can enter in a county and a state, or a city and a state. And we'll show you all the opportunities in that locale. We'll show you what the fair market rents are. We'll show you what the income qualifications are. We'll give you a list of if the waiting lists are for public housing or housing choice voucher are open, or if they were at some point, we'll give you a list of project-based properties, 515 properties, all that stuff on one page. So affordablehousingonline.com. And again, Nate will post a link there. And hopefully that helps. But again, don't give up, keep applying. I can tell you every single day we hear about users that get offered housing vouchers. They get offered public housing, or tax credit, or Section 8 opportunities. So, all right, next question. If I'm in a lease when my voucher comes in, is there any legal way to break the lease? So there's a couple of more tidbits of information that I might need, but first of all, you have to decide, is the rental that you're in, is it a rental that you might want to use the voucher at, right? So if the property meets the physical standard requirements of the voucher program, and it's in the location, it's in the area of the voucher program you're interested in, the landlord's willing to accept your Section 8 voucher, and you are happy with it, you want to live there, you like the neighborhood, you like the property, then there might be a way to actually just stay there and bring that property and that lease under your new voucher. There's going to be some paperwork to do. But if any one of those four criteria answers to those questions are no, then, and you're forced to find another rental, then it becomes more problematic. You may just be able to go to your landlord and say, hey, I need to move. I know I have a lease, and it depends how close you are to the end of the lease. Sometimes they'll be willing to work with you, sometimes not. You kind of gotta just go to them gently and in full cooperation. Say, I'd really like to to terminate the lease, what are your expectations? At least establish what the expectations are. I don't believe there's any legal grounds for you to just terminate your lease. You will end up, if they so choose, they could file a judgment against you. You'll end up, there will be some legal issues you have to deal with. So I think the best way to solve that problem is with Honey. And you might be prepared to have to pay the landlord a little bit, maybe at least a month's rent or something. So hope that answered your question. Nate, you have anything for me? Okay. All right. So I'm going to keep on moving. What's that?
Skip that one.
Okay. Yeah. I want to find out more about getting access for people who are on disability who cannot find housing, especially in housing communities that require people to be 55. I'm not sure I understand exactly what the question is. I want to find out more about getting access for people who are on disability who cannot find housing. I'm not sure what the definition of access is in that question. If the questioner is still watching, if you can clarify and explain what you mean by access, and Nate will monitor the comments and get that into me. I'm going to move on to the next one and then come back to you. Hopefully I have some clarification by the time I finish this one. All right, landlords are discriminating against disabled people like me by requiring me to have 3 times my current income to show that I can pay my rent. What can I do? Requiring me to have 3 times my current income to show that I can pay my rent. All right, well, first of all, I wouldn't call it discrimination. Remember, discrimination, well, it depends. If their goal is to make sure that no disabled person can qualify, then that's discrimination, but I'm not sure that that's the reason. I think for the most part, landlords are business people and they want to make sure that their rent's going to come in on time. And so they may feel like that you won't be able to pay the rent. But I don't really know when you say they have 3 times your current income to show that you can pay the rent. That's a lot. Is it, you have 3 times the rent amount? If the rent's $500 a month, are they saying you need to show at least $1,500? If it's 3 times your current income, that is really a lot. Let's say that your current income, if you're on Social Security disability and you're getting $8,000 or $9,000 a year, 3 times your income, that's $20-some thousand. No one on disability or Social Security has $20-some thousand sitting in the bank that they can use. If that's the case, then you may have an issue. If you do feel like you're legitimately being discriminated against, HUD has a discrimination hotline, and you can post anonymously to that hotline through HUD's website. And Nate, at the end of this, let's go ahead and post a link to HUD's discrimination hotline. So if someone really does think they're being discriminated against, they can do that. All right. Did we get any clarification on getting access for people who are on disability, Nate? No.
I asked.
Okay. So I'll try and answer it generally. There are lots of different housing programs out there that are for folks who are disabled or seniors. Typically, the definition of senior is 62 or older. There are some, like you asked in your comment, for 55 plus, but typically the federal government definition of senior is 62. The Section 515 program, which is a rural program, it's an apartment rental program with rental assistance, has lots and lots of apartments available in rural America. 62 or older is a qualifying age. And then for those that are set aside for seniors that are 62 or older, those properties also allow you to have a disability. So even if you're 30 or 40, if you have a certified disability, you would qualify to live in one of those senior properties. Then you have a HUD program called Section 202, which is urban style senior housing. It's not public housing. It's privately owned, usually by a nonprofit. And it comes with a rental subsidy, just like Section 8. And there's plenty of those properties all over the country. You've got tax credit communities, which are usually the upper tier of America's affordable housing portfolio. Many times there's no rental subsidies associated with it. The rents are a little bit higher, but they're still much lower than in the general public. And especially nowadays, the tax credit program, a lot of these properties are being built with much higher levels of disabled access units. So that, the federal disability law has, I think it's not, if I'm not mistaken, it's 5% is required, but many of the tax credit programs exceed that significantly by 10 or 20% of their units have to be accessible, like right now have to be accessible for people with disabilities. And on top of that, a lot of tax credit properties are classified as elderly too, or senior. So you've got that, and then project-based Section 8, there's plenty of those types of properties that are senior, 62 or older. And on top of that, you have public housing. So there's this whole segment of affordable housing that's set aside for seniors. And we always try to make a point to classify it on our site. So when you go to Affordable Housing Online, you're looking at a property, you're going to see whether or not it's senior or elderly. Over on the right side or up above, it'll tell you. Okay, I have about 7 minutes to go. And it looks like I may have one more question down here to answer, and I have an open seat. If anybody wants to come on air and ask me a question, I'd love to help out if I can. If you're just joining, or you just joined in the last few minutes, I'm David Layfield with Affordable Housing Online. I founded Affordable Housing Online 15 years ago. I'm an affordable housing expert that has done all sorts of things in this industry. I have developed affordable housing communities. I'm a current developer and owner of affordable housing. I used to work for the U.S. government managing a federal housing program in Washington. I've cut the grass at affordable housing properties. So I kind of have a pretty well-rounded understanding of the industry and able to answer your questions. And Affordable Housing Online is a website that serves about 1 million low-income renters each month searching for housing and housing assistance and housing help. And that's what we're here to do. Okay, I have actually 2 requests to join me. One, and I'll start with Darnell Frazier. Let's see if we can get you in. Remember, if you have a poor internet connection, it may be difficult to connect with you. And you might want to try Wi-Fi. I'm going to go ahead and also try, hey, Darnell, how you doing?
I'm fine, how are you?
Great. What can I do for you today?
Well, I was recently disabled due to some spine disease issues I've had. I've been applying for a lot of these housing programs, the wait list including. But my the earlier question was about the 3 times the income.
Okay.
Okay. I only have a limited amount of income per month, and every time I go and apply for housing, it feels like I'm being discriminated against because I can prove that I make over a certain dollar, but I can't qualify for 3 times the income. And so then when you look at applying for housing, which they automatically have like a $50 application fee, and then in Florida they have a $150 application fee for like background checks and stuff like that. I'm like, well, are you discriminating against me, making me pay these fees? So you can automatically disqualify me based upon the fact that you already know that I don't meet your requirements in terms of having 3 times the income. I mean, if I'm disabled, I'm getting income, and I can prove it. Why wouldn't you let me move into your complex if you have a space available?
Okay.
That's what I meant about being discriminated against.
Okay. All right. First of all, $150 is a really high application fee, and I would steer away from those landlords. There's no criminal background check and no credit report that costs $150.
I know that's right.
Between the 2 of those, anyone can go online and purchase them for landlord purposes. If you fill out the right paperwork releasing that information, those can be purchased for $30, $40, $50. So I would suggest, first of all, you steer clear of any landlords asking for a $150 application fee, because that sounds fishy to begin with. All right, so
$150 administrative fee.
Yeah, that's just a profit center for them. Then they simply have a motivation to get more people to apply, and no wonder they're rejecting folks. That's borderline userism. Anyway, let's take the question about the 3 times thing. Now, I need to understand this. You're saying they're requiring you to have 3 times income. Can you explain exactly what they're saying about that?
They're saying that you have to have 3 times the income to qualify to rent an apartment.
3 times the income, so 3 times your rent. So if the rent is $500, they need you to have $1,500 a month in rent and income.
Exactly.
Okay. That's that's a standard private landlord practice. I'm not saying 3 times is standard, but it's pretty close. Like for example, if you're looking at a mortgage, a banker is going to say that your mortgage payment shouldn't exceed 35 to 40% of your monthly income. So 3 times, that's 33%, right? So that's pretty close. But I mean, my question to you is if your income is, and you don't need to tell me what your actual, don't tell me what your income is, but let's use my example, right? So let's say that it's $1,000, right? Your income is $1,000 and the rent is $1,500, and they're saying, or I'm sorry, the rent's $500, and they're saying that your income has to be $1,500 a month, and your income's only $1,000. Well, I'm going to ask you, how do you think you can, or do you really think that you can pay the rent every month of $500 and only have $500 left to live?
Yes. You have to, because you're on limited income. Okay. Because this building only gives you $733, and then when you fight them and you win your earnings, then your earnings, represent what you automatically are going to get. And so a lot of these apartments that I've applied to are disqualifying me based upon the fact that I don't have a 3 times the income.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
It's problematic.
Yeah. So their concern is that you don't have enough disposable, and I know that that's a terrible word when it's used to buy your food, but they're concerned you don't have enough disposable income left over for your living expenses to actually pay your rent. And they've got to trust that the first $500 that comes in the door is going to come to them before you spend more. And I always say try to appeal to folks' human side. And you can try and ask for special consideration or an exception. I mean, if you don't have a car, let's just say, for example, you don't have a car, you don't have car payment, you don't have insurance, you don't have fuel costs, then that disposable income is less necessary, right? Exactly. If you have other things that are not part of your monthly budget, then you might be able to persuade them to reconsider that standard rule that they're using.
They won't even talk to you about that.
Yeah, but then you need to move on. You need to move on to a different landlord. You have to find a different landlord that's willing to talk to you and not charge you a $150 fee. Honestly,
I'm in Florida, and it's happening all over.
Where are you at?
Big complexes, and it wasn't just in Fort Lauderdale, but in Daytona they were like that, and in Chicago the same thing.
And do they have subsidies? Are they affordable communities? Or are they just standard market rate?
Both.
Darnell, we're losing you. I would say that I think we just lost you there for a minute, Darnell. I would say that if it's an affordable housing community, it's financed by the federal government. Hey, Nate, are you getting me, or is it me or him with bad signal? Okay, all right. Just want to make sure I'm still live. Darnell, we lost you. So I'll go ahead and finish answering this question. If a federally financed affordable housing community is saying you have to have 3 times your income, that sounds a little fishy. Most of them don't do that. So I would ask Darnell. I would ask about that when you go back, or when you apply to new ones. Inquire about that. Doesn't sound right. All right, J.R. Molina is a Dallas realtor. I'm going to try and bring you in. It's a little bit after 4. I've got a couple more minutes to spare, so I'll go ahead and try and bring in J.R. from Dallas. Who shot J.R.? Yeah, there you. Hey, JR, you're driving.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, sir? How's everything going?
Good. I'm going to ask you to put it on audio only as part of Blab's policy for folks that are driving.
Okay. No idea how to do that, but
There should be a button if you tap the screen. Just tap the screen, and it'll say audio only. I'm sure I have somebody from Blab watching, and they will scold me if I don't have you put it on audio only. We don't want to cause an accident.
here, I'm gonna pull over here. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Anyways, while I have you here, just a couple questions on the investment side of it. Let's say I have a client that's looking for one of these types of properties. Is there a website that I could go to, or is there a good way that I could look up some of these properties, maybe in my local area here in Dallas?
So when you say these properties that are currently accepting Section 8, or?
Well, let's say that I have an investor that wants to, purchase one of these properties, that are going to be like a Section 8 community or something like that.
Are you talking about one house? Are you talking about just one house?
No, like either like a complex,
okay,
or just these kinds of communities that are going to have. So I don't know if you guys do if it's more like quadplexes, or if you guys have like actual apartment whole complexes that you guys use. And I got in here at the tail end of this, so I'm not too familiar with exactly what the stream was about. But yeah, that was my question. If you guys have any kind of existing website where like an agent can go and try to help their clients that are looking to invest in the property such as
I guess you're
Section 8.
You're asking, is there a place where you can go to find properties you could potentially buy?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, you as an investor could actually use affordable housing online for that, the same way that renters are using it. So if you go to affordablehousingonline.com, our site, and we'll post a link at the end of the blog, and you search for Dallas or Fort Worth or whatever, or a county, we'll, down below, we have a list of properties that are federally subsidized, and there'll be a list of Section 8 properties, and you could just as easily build a list of potential investment opportunities, just like a renter is looking for a rental opportunity.
Right.
It's going to require some work to contact them, but and I listened to there's a blog called Bigger Pockets, I think. Do you listen to Bigger Pockets? Okay.
Yep, I've heard of that.
And there was one blog post from a guy that is now a successful investor doing exactly what you want to do. He'd been doing it for 7 or 8 years. And I've been doing that for 20 some years. But we've moved on to a little different. We try to build and renovate using tax credits and other more sophisticated mechanisms. But this guy was doing the same thing you're talking about. And he sends out direct mailers. So he'll build a list in Dallas. And in fact, it's funny, he just bought a property in Dallas. He was talking about the Texas market and how he likes the Texas market because there's no state income tax and the economy's booming there, and apartment properties are cheap but growing in equity value. So he just built a list of different properties he was interested in, found the owners, and sent direct mail, like postcards or letters to them asking if they were interested in selling.
Gotcha.
So if you're looking for that, we have that database. You can find that on Affordable Housing Online. Okay,
and then lastly, just real quick, I've kind of stayed away from this kind of deal. I'm assuming there's more red tape, like lots more paperwork that has to go into it. Where can somebody like myself kind of get more versed in all the ins and outs of it? Is there like a blog, or is there a website that kind of has all that, extra paperwork and, reading up on all the ins and outs?
How many years do you have? Yeah. I mean, I would recommend for a novice investor, it's not done this before, to just stick with looking for, a project-based Section 8 property that may not have any other subsidies attached to it. And that's, as far as government subsidized housing programs and investing in them goes, that's probably the simplest entree into that business. When you get to doing with stuff that we do with low-income housing tax credits and tax-exempt bond transactions and bringing in, institutional investors and that kind of stuff, it gets extraordinarily complex. And they look very, very, the investors and lenders scrutinize your track record. I mean, we've been doing this for 25 years. We have a long resume. We've closed a bunch of deals. They look at everything. So it's a lot harder as a beginner to do that sort of development. So you want to focus more on just, trying to find a 4-plex or an 8-plex or 15 or 20-plex that has a Section 8 contract on it.
Gotcha.
But as far as resources go, I think the first thing I would do is go Google Section 8 and HUD.gov. And so HUD's going to be the best place to get, kind of landlord-centric guidance on what to expect. And then the Bigger Pockets blog, I know that they're going to probably have something pretty close to decent guidance that you want to start with.
Okay. Well, cool. Thank you very much for answering my questions, and thanks for having this blab. It was a really good resource for me.
I do it every Wednesday at 3:00. So.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks
we'll
for joining us, man. See you.
Thanks.
Okay. It looks like I've reached the end of my allotted time. It's 4:08, and I'm gonna have to run out of here in a couple of minutes. So. Again, I do this every Wednesday at 3:00. Sometimes I start early, and this week I started pretty early, around 2:30 or so. I'm happy to answer any question you throw at me. I usually can give you an answer on the fly. If not, I'm happy to go research it, which I've got some homework to do. And we try to publish a summary of what happened here on the talk show. As soon as possible with a summary of all the questions and answers. In fact, we're running 2 weeks behind. I'm about to approve publication of the one that happened 2 weeks ago. So we'll try and catch up, but this is fairly new for us. And with our staff's existing workload, we're running a little bit behind. But anyway, thank you for joining me this week. Again, if you want to be notified whenever we do this, hit that little man right there, that plus button, and follow us on Blab, and then you will be notified whenever we go online. It'll be a lot easier to connect with us. Also, I would recommend that you download, if you have an iPhone, download the Blab iOS app. It is much easier to use and much more user-friendly than using your Android, mobile access, the mobile site. And if you have an Android phone, hopefully Blab, if you're listening, we need an Android app soon. We really appreciate this platform, but would love to see an Android app sometime soon. All right. Thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you next week.